My name is Jerry Eichhorst. I'm the president of the Idaho chapter of the Oregon-California Trail Association. So I'm really excited to have this opportunity to show you some of the Oregon Trail. We're going to have 3 stops this morning. We'll stop at Mayfield, we'll stop at Bounds Creek, then we'll go to Canyon Creek, and then we'll head down to Mountain Home, have lunch in their city park, and then we'll head home on the back roads. You'll have about 30 miles of gravel today, 32 miles or so. This is a booklet about the Byway that I put together for the BLM many years ago. But this will give you the complete Byway. We're just going to do about half of part 3 today. Okay, so you'll read about Ezra Meeker, who came over the trail in '52, and he went backwards in 1906 and 1910, back to New York City, back to meet with governors, presidents, to try and preserve the Oregon Trail. So he was in a wagon with oxen those 2 trips. In 1916, he drove an old Pathfinder vehicle that he had a canvas camper on, and he drove it east to west. In 1928, Henry Ford built him a Model A truck bed that he was going to come follow the Oregon Trail again. Unfortunately, he got sick in Michigan, was not able to make the drive. He came out by train and died a couple months later. That vehicle's never been found. But there is history with antique cars on this route that you'll be driving today. Okay, this is the town site of Mayfield. This area was one of the first places that people homesteaded in southwest Idaho, 1865. So it was pretty early. Obie Corder had a little store. You'll see that over here on the left. A stone store, and he also had a house, and he raised horses over here in the pasture land. He became pretty famous in the area. They stayed out here till the early 1900s. But this community hall behind me was built in about 1916 by a guy out of Kuna. When they did the flooring on it, they had no way to rip the boards narrower. So there's a 2-inch gap down the middle that you had to step over for the dances. They had dances out here till the early 1960s. If you go back to the old newspaper ads, they were still advertising dances to about 63. Bands like the Mystics out of Boise and stuff would come out. And they'd have some pretty good parties out here. The sheriff was out here regularly to break up the fights. There's even a newspaper account that the women were fighting. But unfortunately, some of the people were drinking and then driving and getting in accidents on these roads on the way back. Across the road over here is the old teacher's house and the schoolhouse. Those were brought in from the town of Orchard in the early 60s. And like I say, you've got the old store and an old stable that's broken down off in the distance here. So we're going to continue on this road to Bounds Creek. Go ahead and look in here. Picture this 30 years ago when I first saw it as having velvet curtains up on the stage. The floor was still intact. The roof was still intact. Now this is probably going to have to be torn down. And unfortunately, there's a huge development plan for this area. 2,000 plus houses in this valley, along with buildings and stores and offices. Okay, it's going to totally change this area. is known as Bounds Creek Inscription Rock. It's a little hard to see the names, but there are names written in axle grease. Because the sun is behind it and you're in the shade for those names, they're kind of hard to see right now.
You can see some of them.
At one point, I counted 22 names on that rock, and I have a photo with all of the names circled.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I saw that.
But there's a little ledge here, and there's some names along it. There's some over in this upper left corner. You can't really see the interpretive sign because it's 12 years old and the sun has destroyed it. But the artist who drew the picture here is drawing C. Smith, and her name was Cindy Smith. So she had a little fun with it. I also want you to look at this rock up on the hill here. Anybody see a dragon, turtle, all sorts of different
I
things?
see a dragon.
See that?
Yeah, I see it.
So
I see a rock.
So the Oregon Trail came down this valley from the left, and this was a camping area along Bounds Creek here. Anytime there was a big boulder beside the trail, immigrants wrote their names in axle grease. Axle grease this far west was likely fat from whatever animals they had killed that got thrown in a bucket and kind of congealed into a thick gooey mess, and then it turned black with all the dust it picked up. Okay, it wasn't axle grease anymore that you would have purchased in a store back in the east. But they would camp in this area and then they headed off over the hill. As we came down that last grade, on the left there was a good road. Okay, that's the Oregon Trail and the Overland Stage Road. It was a long stretch there where you could see it on your left. There's better places to see these names. There's a rock about 5 miles to the east of here on Ditto Creek that's got a little bit of covered area, and the names are still pretty visible in it. Have you ever been to City of Rocks? Yes. Okay, they've got a lot of names of California Trail pioneers on their rocks there, Camp Rock and Register Rock. They've got a lot of names and they're pretty well sheltered in some cases. So you're on a Model A tour of the Oregon Trail today.
This was one of the best tours we've been on.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
We're having a great time.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your car.
Well, this car was originally owned by the first president of our club, who passed away. And a high school friend of mine bought the car, and then he decided to sell it, so I didn't want to be sold out of state to keep it here, and so I bought it, and that's the end of the story.
Awesome. What type of engine does it have?
The original 4-banger.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying the tour. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the Canyon Creek Valley. There's a year-round stream over here on the east side of the valley. It's surrounded by steep cliffs. It's an oasis in the desert, and it's one of my favorite places on the Oregon Trail in Idaho. This stage station was built in about 1875. It was used as a stage stop. It was an overnight stop. The front building had living quarters on the downstairs, 3 bedrooms on the upstairs. It was a pretty amazing place to be. Behind it is a little cooking building. There was a covered drive between the two, so you could get out of the wagon and be protected from the weather. This valley was often filled with teams of freighters and stagecoaches, and of course all the manure. There were a number well, there's a newspaper account, some lady writes about how it was difficult to walk across the valley without stepping in the piles. People used to come out from Boise with wagons and fish the creek and bring home wagonfuls of trout from the creek. This creek is now the only year-round running stream basically between Malad River and Boise River. Okay, it comes into C.J. Strike Reservoir a little bit north of the dam. So the Daniel family ran the stage station for many years. I've got kind of a short history of that in the write-up that I gave you. Their cemetery is over here to the left of the metal barn. You can see some of the kiosks and stuff. That kiosk has, I think, 3 different children's names on it that all died within a couple years of each other. The station was lived in until the early 1970s. And on December 24th, 1974, I believe it was, they had a fire and the station burned. And then it started to fall apart. So if you would have seen this station 10 years ago, it was basically 4 quarter walls and piles of rubble around it. I worked with the owners, the Norstebon family, and the Idaho Heritage Trust. We collected donations through the Idaho chapter of OCTA, and Idaho Heritage Trust matched those, and we hired a historic architect to stabilize the building so it wouldn't get any worse. We then worked out an arrangement with the BLM for the BLM to take ownership of this half-acre parcel of land. Norstebons transferred it to them. We had a signing ceremony out here, and the BLM has now funded the restoration that you see behind you. It looks great. The only problem with it is there's no windows and no door. Because it's a federal entity, the BLM, they have to get 3 competitive bids for the windows. They can only find one company that makes that era window. So we don't have windows yet. We hope to someday get the windows in, get the door in, be able to bring school kids out and have them tour this facility. So we have access to it. Walk around through it. It looks great. It used to be a pile of rubble with a fence covered in a vine and rattlesnakes, and all of that's been cleared out.